Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you've ever studied English for years, memorizing all those grammar rules, absolutely acing your vocabulary test, only to find yourself completely speechless or maybe making panicked eye contact when a native speaker actually talks to you, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're totally reframing how we look at language learning. We're going to stop treating it like a boring grammar test and start treating it like what it really is, a dynamic neurological workout. We are pulling from some really fascinating research here. Everything from psycholinguistics to brand new 2024 ethnography data on oral fluency, just to show you exactly how to train your brain for automatic English. Okay, let's dive into this. It's incredibly frustrating, right? When you know the words, but your brain just completely freezes the literal second you open your mouth. So why does that actually happen? Well, take a deep breath, because it's a biological reaction. It is not a vocabulary problem. You see, your brain is incredibly efficient. Honestly, some might even say it's naturally lazy. When someone asks you a question in English, your brain instantly hunts for the easiest, most familiar path to get an answer out. And for you, that path is your native language. When it desperately tries to translate your complex thoughts from your native language back into English, it just takes way too much time, and bam, that dreaded translation freeze hits you. To really wrap our heads around this, we need to look at what scientists call a default setting. Basically, your native language is your brain's default. It's the option your brain automatically chooses simply because it takes zero extra energy. Now, don't worry, the goal of our brain training today isn't to erase your native language. Not at all. The actual goal is to build a brand new automatic default setting specifically for English so your brain doesn't have to waste all that precious energy translating back and forth. And here is the absolute best news. Your brain is completely equipped to do this, all thanks to a little something called neuroplasticity. This is basically your brain's incredible superpower to change, adapt, and literally build new pathways, no matter how old you are. Every single time you practice thinking directly in English, you are physically wiring a brand new pathway in your brain. You're laying down the tracks for a new automatic habit. But to actually build that pathway, we have to fundamentally change how you consume the language. Which brings us to step one. Fix your listening habit. To train your brain for fluency, we really have to shift our focus away from passive background noise and turn it into an active physical skill. There is a stark difference between these two approaches. Think about it. Most people rely on passive listening, having an English podcast playing while you're washing the dishes or binge watching Netflix with the subtitles turned on. Now, don't get me wrong, passive listening is great for building this subconscious familiarity with the rhythm of a language over time. But it doesn't train your brain to react. Active listening, on the other hand, that is intentional. It's task-based. It means sitting down to identify specific keywords, taking notes, and physically forcing your brain to filter and retain detailed information in real time. To put that into perspective, if you're taking a high-stakes exam, like the IELTS, for example, just relying on passive listening is not going to get you that high band score. Data from IELTS preparation experts actually suggest a highly specific breakdown, 60% active listening and 40% passive listening. Devoting the vast majority of your study time to active, intensely focused listening builds up your concentration and test awareness. It trains your brain to catch the exact details it needs without leaning on the crutch of subtitles or translations. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it introduces a massive shift in how we think. Speaking isn't just a mental exercise, it's a physical motor skill. You can't get better at playing basketball just by reading a book about it, right? You have to physically get out there and throw the ball. Speaking English requires that exact same physical repetition for your mouth, your tongue, and your breath. This actually brings us to a really fascinating scientific technique. Way back in the 1950s, scientists like Alvin Lieberman and the Leningrad Group were trying to figure out the exact time difference between when we hear speech and when we physically produce it. They developed a method called speech shadowing. Fast forward to today, and this exact same technique is heavily used in everything from stuttering research to high-level language fluency training. So what did those early scientists actually discover? Well, they found that when participants were asked to instantly repeat speech as they heard it, like without even waiting for the sentence to finish, the standard reaction time was a lightning-fast 250 milliseconds. And incredibly, for people with left-dominant brains, that dropped to just 150 milliseconds. Your brain is capable of processing and producing language at an absolutely astonishing speed. When you practice the shadowing technique, you are literally repeating an English podcast out loud exactly as you hear it. And by doing this, you activate what's called the auditory motor feedback loop. Basically, you're connecting the superior temporal cortex, which is where you process sound, directly to Broca's area, which controls your actual speech muscles. Shadowing forces your motor regions to unconsciously process the rhythm, the syntax, and the connected speech of English, completely bypassing that slow, clunky translation phase. But how do you handle those super fast reaction times in a real live conversation? Well, that is step 3. Hack your fluency with chunks. Instead of trying to quickly build a sentence word by agonizing word, fluent speakers use formulaic sequences. And this brilliantly illustrates just how important these chunks really are. We have recent 2024 ethnography data that observed senior high school ESL students, and it shows exactly what they use to actually achieve oral fluency. A massive 49.5% of their sequences were phrasal verbs, things like figure out or look up. Lexical bundles, like at the end of the day, made up nearly 22%, and that was followed by collocations like pay attention. These students were not inventing new sentences from scratch. They were rapidly deploying pre-assembled blocks of English. Using these chunks actually solves a huge problem for learners, and that is the awkward pause. When you translate word by word, you end up pausing right in the middle of a thought. We all know that agonizing feeling, and it instantly signals non-fluency to the person listening. But by memorizing full formulaic sequences, you train yourself to pause at clause junctures, basically pausing between your ideas rather than right inside them. This simple shift makes your speech sound incredibly smooth and connected, even if your overall vocabulary is still growing. All right, step 4 is where the magic really happens, building a daily brain routine. You have to solidify these new neural pathways to turn English into an automatic reflex. So we've broken this down into a highly actionable 5-step challenge. Here is your daily neurological workout. First, narrate your morning routine in English, just inside your head. When you're making coffee, literally think to yourself, I am making coffee. Second, shadow a short video out loud to really train that physical auditory motor loop. Third, be remarkably consistent. Fourth, make mistakes boldly, don't hold back. And fifth, immerse your environment. Change your phone's language to English, make English something you just naturally encounter every single day.
So the crucial point is knowing what to do when you inevitably forget a word during this practice. Whatever you do, do not stop and translate. Instead, you're going to use a cheat code called circumlocution. This is a vital skill where you just describe the object using the simple words you already know. Like if you forget the word for oven, you just say the thing in the kitchen that heats food. Honestly, native speakers do this all the time. It keeps the cognitive wheels turning in English and entirely bypasses that dreaded translation freeze.
As you build this daily routine, you have to remember this golden rule. Consistency beats intensity. Your brain builds permanent connections through steady daily repetition. Seriously, doing just 5 minutes of active English shadowing and narrating every single day is vastly more powerful than a grueling, exhausting 2-hour cram session once a month. It's like a plant. Water it a little bit every day, and it will absolutely thrive. And as for making mistakes, you just have to embrace the mindset of fake it till you make it. Mistakes are not the enemy here. They are the exact mechanism of your brain learning. Every single time you make a mistake and push through it, your brain adjusts and builds a stronger, more permanent connection. Act confident, speak the language out loud even when you aren't perfectly sure of the grammar, and eventually, I promise you, that manufactured confidence will become absolutely real. Which brings us to a final question. Are you ready to stop studying and start training your brain today? Fluency is not some magical gift you're born with. It is the direct result of a daily active neurological workout. It's time to ditch the passive background listening, start shadowing out loud, use your language chunks, and fully embrace your mistakes. Put this brain training guide to work and you will be absolutely amazed at how quickly your English becomes an automatic reflex. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.